Hello, everyone. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone joining us today. Thank you so much for joining our first online event in the lead up of the International Zero Waste Day on the 30th of March 2024. Um, welcome to the Youth Impact for Zero Waste Spotlight on Challenges, Solutions, Actions, and Policy Advocacy. Um, so as you've seen earlier in the concept note and in our communication, that the International Day of Zero Waste is a global platform to emphasize the critical importance of effective waste management and the imperative to promote sustainable consumption and production. Um, Youth actions and practices play a crucial role in combating waste pollution and on the way to reach zero waste. And that's why during this event we will together explore some impact of the waste generated and how this impact the young people, infant children, and youth and human beings in general. Also, we will put some spotlight on youth actions and practices, and will be time to hear from you what you have been experiencing, if uh, as we can get as many as possible. And then the last, we will discuss about a submission and policy advocacy and how you can um, link your actions to the policy making and to the environmental governance. Very quickly, our agenda for today, we will start with the opening and introduction of the Zero Waste Day, and then we will have Dr. Henrietta Mbufo. So she will share with us the waste pollution impact on human health with a special focus on infants, children, and youth. And then we will have around 15 minutes for youth initiatives and best practices. And we will also have the informal youth consultations. But one thing to highlight is that um, this event is our first one, and then moving forward on coming Tuesday, we are having another online event where we also addressing the youth impact in a global scale. The online event is a collaboration between the Caribbean Sub-Regional Office and then UNITC along with CYMG, the Children Youth Major Group, to UNEP, where we will also put some spotlights in youth actions and practices in one of the sessions. And we will also hear from UNEP what are the efforts have been made in some regions and some countries. So we are invited to register and to attend joining the second event on Tuesday. So before moving forward and giving the floor to Henrietta, I'll just share with you very quick housekeeping rules. Please keep yourself muted unless you want to speak. Raise your hands, you'll be given the floor if it's possible. Otherwise, write your input to the chat, questions, or share your practices or your reflections or ideas. And then when it comes to the informal youth consultations, more guidelines and instructions will be shared by our facilitators for today. Just to emphasize on the objectives of this event is that we would like to explore the impacts of waste pollution on human health and other aspects, this environmental sustainability and socioeconomic development. We would like also to see a dialogue and discussions between all of us to explore challenges, solutions, strategies, and also to finalize the submissions and the written submissions that we have been working on together offline for quite a couple of weeks to inform the United Nations Special Rapporteur thematic report on gender and toxins, and with this cross-cutting challenge the waste pollution and the waste impact, that one of the reasons to expose people to the toxic substances and impact. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. Henrietta Mbuvu to take the floor and to share with us some of the insights. But before that, I will very briefly introduce here. Dr. Henrietta is a medical doctor from Ghana whose interest lies in health, climate change, and information technology. She currently serves as the environmental health thematic co-facilitator of the Children and Youth Major Group and UNFPA Youth Leaders Fellow. Dr. Mbufo has clinical experience in the management of diseases and illness, including those related to waste and chemicals exposure, working under the Ministry of Health in Ghana. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Henrietta. Henrietta, the floor is yours.
Hello? Hello?
Hi. Yes, you are audible. We can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'll be sharing my screen for all of us to see. Just a moment. If you can see my screen, just let me know, maybe with a thumbs up or... Just a moment. Can you all see my screen now? Yeah. Great. So welcome everyone to today's session. It will be quite brief. The topic is on the impact of waste pollution on health, which is a very broad topic. Thank you very much, Asil, for the opportunity. And I hope that by the end of this session, at least you would have learned something new. My name is Henrietta Ampofo. Nice to meet all of you. So for the outline for today, I'll first, of course, start with a disclaimer, our introduction, a body call for action, and then we'll have our Q&As. So disclaimers, I am not an employee of UNEP or any chemical or waste entity. I am affiliated with UNFPA, but I'm not speaking in that capacity. And as always, I prefer PowerPoint presentations being points rather than cluttered paragraphs. And so you see from my slides that there are more pictures and points than paragraphs so that we can be more engaging. Also, I plan on having a few feedback sessions during this presentation. So I'll be asking a few questions and looking out in the chat for responses. If my other colleagues online could also help me with that, that would be great. So we start with our presentation. My first slide, I would like to ask each and every one of us, what do you see? You can put your answers in the chat. Great. People see plastic bottles. Yes, there are quite a number of plastic bottles, empty plastic bottles, plastic pollution. Great. Tailpipes. Yes. A wetland or swamp. Yes. You see air pollution. You see air pollution from exhaust, car exhaust. Yes. Emissions, plastic pollution, etc. Great. So obviously these are just pictures that I got off the internet, and I just wanted to bring to light, the pollution that is around us. For some people, it's just, across the road from the exhaust pipes of cars. For others, there are plastic bottles, plastic waste lying around, right? And we see them on a daily basis. Sorry, I skipped the slide. Okay, so yes, we would start with the question. So myth or fact, right? Majority of waste globally consists of plastic waste. Is this a myth or a fact? You can just put your response in the chat. Okay, I have a lot of facts. 1 myth, 2 myths. Interesting. A couple more responses, then we move on to the next slide. Okay, myth, fact, plastic pollution, fact. Interesting. Okay, so drum roll. What is the truth? So yes, it is a myth, and was also a shocker to me as I was doing research for this presentation, right? And the next slide would further explain it. So when we speak about waste, right, waste is very vast. The topic is a really huge one, and mostly it connotes something that is unwanted, right? And or an end product of a process that would not be used again, so be discarded off, right? And we have various categories for waste. We have organic, inorganic, based on the sources. We have, based on the state of matter, we have solid, liquid, gas, we have mixed waste. And then with the advancement of technology, we have what? E-waste, what? Electronic waste, which usually is mixed waste. You have some metals, you have some plastics in there, we have radioactive substances in there. Then I would also like to highlight the fact that pollution is because of inappropriate disposal, right? Because in some cases, waste from one process can actually feed into another process as a source of resource, or as a resource into another process, right? But because of inappropriate disposal, we have pollution, right? Inappropriate disposal of waste, right? And this waste pollution does not just affect, humans. It actually affects all living things, right? Humans, plants, microorganisms, ecosystems are all affected by it. And that is where the One Health concept comes in. Now, to the question I asked, right? So according to the Global Waste Management Outlook Report 2024, actually, majority of waste globally consists of food and garden waste. So we're having a lot more waste being organic, and it is seen as like a trend across the globe. I think except for North Africa and Europe, which has less than 50% of their waste being from food. Majority of the world actually has about 50 or more percent of their waste being food. Paper was next, and then we have plastics, etc. So you can read a report and get the specifics of it, right? But as also shocking to me, it came to light that majority of our global waste actually consists of food and garden waste, which is sad, because we have a huge percentage of the world that are hungry, and a lot of food is actually going to waste, right? But for this presentation, we'll be specifically focusing on children, youth, and pregnant women. So next, myth or fact, right? 25% of the world's garbage is burnt. Okay, fact. Not clear. Interesting. Anyone thinks it's a myth? Myth. Okay, I'm seeing some myths there. I'm seeing facts. I'm seeing a mixture of responses. Interesting. Okay. So drum roll again. Let's see, what does the report say, or what is reported, right? Again, it's a myth. So actually, 40% of the world's garbage is burnt, of which 12% consists of plastics, right? And this again highlights the point I made early on about inappropriate disposal, right? Inappropriate disposal of waste. You can imagine the kind of gases that are emitted from waste being burnt, right? You can see in that picture, this is mixed waste. You see a bit of plastic, a bit of paper, etc., all being burnt together. And all this constitutes the pollution we've been talking about. So we'll move on to the vulnerable groups. Now, according to UNEP, as well as reports from WHO and other related environmental bodies, most of the vulnerable groups include children, women, especially pregnant women, the elderly, the youth, persons with disabilities. And this is just to name a few. Most of the reports put these 5 categories at the topmost aspect of it. And today we'll try to understand why these groups are vulnerable. We are the Children and Youth Major Group. We are totally part of this. We are part of the vulnerable groups. And we understand how this waste impacts our health. So we talk about the health impacts, right? It is head to toe, right? No part of, as I've emphasized, no part is spared, right? We have different symptoms, different illnesses, different diseases, right? Some would come in an acute phase, which means that it happens there and then. Others in a chronic phase, which is either you're exposed to it over a long period of time or eventually you get there. And just to name a few, we can talk about lead exposure in children causing mental retardation or reduction in intellectual abilities. We've spoken about e-waste, which consists of radioactive elements, and we have, cancers coming out of radioactive exposure. And we mentioned that children and women and youth are very vulnerable. Now, what happens is that more often than not, according to a WHO report, which I have put in the link as part of my references, you can read further on that. Children and youth and sometimes women, in fact, women scavenge, landfills for electronic parts, right? And they try to get these parts and then sell them so that they can be recycled, right? In the process of, taking apart these or taking out the electronic parts, what happens is they are exposed to radioactive substances, right? We can have the issues of fetal anomalies from what? From mercury exposure. We can have respiratory illnesses. We were just looking at a picture where someone was burning, rubbish, mixed rubbish, and the gases that are emitted out, right, can one trigger asthma. It can cause acute respiratory distresses. It can cause some form of, irritation in the respiratory tract. Long term, you can actually have lung diseases such as obstructive pulmonary diseases, right? Chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, right? COPD. And all these things are things that have to be brought to the fore, right? Just to speak more about the anomalies, right? The anomalies can go from cardiac anomalies, which is children being born with congenital heart anomalies. We can actually have you can actually have stillbirth in the sense that the child is born dead, right? So all this waste actually does affect every single part of you. We speak about the eyes and we have irritation. You can have conjunctivitis from your nose. You can have, allergies, irritations. When we even talk about, your gut, right? We said a lot of food waste, a lot of the waste, it comes from food, right? And if you have food that is contaminated, we can even talk about, gastrointestinal illnesses, acute gastroenteritis, etc. So all this waste, right, does affect every single part of your body. No part is spared, right? Your skin is exposed to chemical substances, is exposed to a lot of things, right? Even the air pollution, right? It can be so irritating to the skin of people. There are people that actually have some form of dermatitis, right, which is an inflammatory process of the skin due to exposure to certain gases, right? And all these things actually affect all humans, but more more in a larger sense, mostly more of the vulnerable groups we have mentioned here, right? I took this off LinkedIn, obviously, and this is just to bring to light that all around us we're receiving information, right, from UNEP, from WHO, from different NGOs that we work with, that are talking to us, that are speaking to us about the health impacts of waste, the health impacts of chemicals on our health, etc., right? This one in particular is speaking about air pollution, right? And it goes ahead to bring this aspect out, where it talks about one of the pollutants mentioned there, and then a major source of it being unclean fuels from cooking, heat, waste burning, transport industry, etc., right? And looking at just this alone from the previous picture I put up, right? All of us, some way or the other, are exposed to this, right? All of us, some way or the other, are exposed to this. And they go ahead to even further explain, right, the consequences of exposure to this. We have lung, bloodstream penetration, which increases risk of heart and lung disease, stroke, cancer, etc. This is just to emphasize and buttress what I had been discussing early on, right? And so this is my favorite part of the presentation, which is the so what aspect, right? We are bombarded with a lot of information, right? From UNEP, from WHO, etc., right? What can I do? What can I do differently? We come together, we write interventions, we put together declarations. But what role can I play as a child, as a youth? What can I do differently when it comes to the impact of waste on health, right? And so it comes to my last but one slide, which is the call for action, right? And it's directed to you. You are today you are the executive director of your life. What can you do? And I would like to appeal to each and every one of us that you should not be afraid to start small. More often than not, we think, I need to rise up the ranks, be the chairperson of IPEN, or be given a position to start something, to make a change in the world. But I want to challenge each and every one of us today to start small and start where you are, right? You can build your own capacity. I have in this presentation, which I'm sure will be shared to all of us, links to documents that you can read, UNEP, WHO reports on the impacts of health, the impacts of waste on health, to build your own capacity, right? These are some of the sessions that can help. But as a youth, as a child, it's also good to also build your own capacity and get to know more. And it doesn't just end there. Share what you've learned with others. You don't have to, own a radio station to send out the information. I mean, if you do, that would be great. But you can start small with your family, with your siblings, with your classmates, educating them, right? And then you take steps in the right direction, right? You also want to minimize your waste. Today, most of us have learned that most of the waste globally is food and garden waste. How can I today take steps to reduce that? Because when food and garden waste does ferment, a lot of methane is produced, which is also another pollutant, which also causes respiratory illnesses, right? So what can I do differently, right? Take the steps in the right direction. And I would entreat each and every one of us to continue to engage with CYMG. You'll be shocked to find out what is going on around the world, right? And if you don't say it, other people may not be experiencing it. So it's always important to speak up when you're given the opportunity. These are my references. Thank you very much. I hope I did not take too much of the time than what was expected. I don't know if we'll take questions now or after, but I'm done with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrietta. Yeah, we can take a couple of questions if anyone wants to ask. You can raise your hand or write them in the chat. I see Roberto. Yeah, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thank you very much. I think someone has to mute himself.
Yeah, it seems that Roberto had some technical problem. Please do write them in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, so I don't know. I don't know. I think it's not coming from me. So, can you hear me very well?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just want to thank you first of all to Dr. Yata for his good presentation on plastic health, on very impact of toxic chemicals and waste on health. I think it's good subject. So, it's not about question, just about compliment, especially when addressing the fact about impact of waste and health. I think this is the best way as youth. It's a great tool that we have to use in advocating for example, for advancing the plastic treaty. For example, some studies that has now started to been released in those last days. I think from when we have started to showcase the impact of plastics on the environment, it says no, we have not seen much studies on the impacts of plastics on health, but now we have seen that the plastic on health, the part of plastic on children, especially for the development of their neurological aspects, it has an impact on an endocrine, and this impact on anything. I think this is a great tool. I want to thank you for the chemical waste platform for bringing me this subject here. I think this is the best tool that we need to use in order to advance some treaties, to see that it's time to be intelligent, to act. I think what is best, when it should stay, every youth must engage at least on one kind of waste. For example, you can act for waste that cause pollution, air pollution, can act on specifically on plastics and health. And one you can start with at least one subject that will help us to lead a good and making on good input in our every time that we engage with other stakeholders, so that I can make good decisions that's on waste that harm our health and harm the children.
Thank you so much, Roberto. Henrietta, there is one question in the chat. If you can have a look on the chat, and then we will move forward.
That was my intervention. Thank you.
Alrighty, great. Thank
Hello,
you.
can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, Henrietta.
Hello,
Yes, you're audible.
I'm audible. Great.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a question about the slide. I'm not sure if I missed the question that was in the chat about impact of health and environment. Have I missed the question?
No, I think there is a question about how can youth-led initiatives overcome political resistance to implement innovative zero-waste solution? And I think this is a very important question. We can discuss it together in the latter session, where we will have the consultation. So
Okay.
yes.
That's fine. But I'll just like to add that, like Derek, with what I was saying, you can start small. You can start small where you are, and more often than not, when you're starting small, there is very little political resistance. It's when you try to expand that there is more political resistance. But another skill we must learn as youth is how to lobby. A lot of us had to use that skill in bilaterals when we were at UNIA and the OECPR. So learning how to lobby, learning how to approach issues when it comes to understanding where they are coming from, from the political stance, and then having them see your perspective and how they can gain from your initiative can help. But I think it will be further discussed in the breakout rooms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henrietta, and thank you for this um, session and the information that you shared. It's very interesting and important. So moving forward, we will now have a chance. So just before I proceed, if you still have any question, please write them in the chat, and then we will try to get them responded by Henrietta. Uh, so right now we will have an open floor where we will have a few to share with us some of best practices. So here we would like to hear from you. What have you done in your community, in your organizations, in your projects, in your school? Doesn't matter the scale of the project, but yet it's kind of an open floor for inspiration. I know that we also have an example of tackling nitrogen waste in South Asia, Nitrogen Hub. So, do we have Rujita?
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
Hi everyone. My name is Rushuta. I'm a PhD scholar at the University of Aberdeen in UK, and I work with South Asia Nitrogen Hub to tackle nitrogen pollution and nitrogen waste. Uh, I'd quickly share my screen, and can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would like to talk a little bit about the nitrogen problem that we are having right now. So as you guys might be knowing that nitrogen
Sorry
is
for
the,
interrupting, but your slide is not visible, but we see the
is
Zoom
it? Just a
screen.
minute.
Yes, now the slides is visible.
Munit, please. Munit, please. Hello, Munit, please. Unmute it, please.
Yep. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I hope the slides are visible and I'm audible. So just give me a nudge if you don't have any of those. Okay. So nitrogen actually is a very abundant gas in atmosphere, but it's mostly inreactive in form. But when it comes to the atmosphere or environment in any way, it becomes reactive. So nitrogen occurs in different forms like methane, nitrous oxide, and NOx. And it has various sources like vehicular pollution, wastewater going to the rivers, and uh, agriculture is a major source of nitrogen pollution as well. So, but why do we focus on nitrogen is that it has a global warming potential. For example, nitrous oxide has 300 times more potential to hold heat in the atmosphere than CO2. It also causes air and water pollution. For example, NOx from vehicular pollution. It contributes to forming smog and acid rain. Um, for water pollution, we know nitrogen causes eutrophication of freshwater bodies. It has health implications and it also causes biodiversity loss. So, for example, ammonia and NOx, they react together and create these particulate matters which we breathe in, which goes in our lungs and enters our bloodstreams, causing asthma and heart diseases. Uh, so these are the some of the implications that we have to deal with when it comes to nitrogen pollution. Nitrogen waste from agriculture is a very big challenge for us. Nitrogen is essential for plant growth, so we need it for the food production. But whatever we apply through fertilizer, chemical fertilizers, only 40% of that is utilized by plant and 60% of it goes waste. So it returns to environment in very harmful ways through greenhouse gases or as pollutants for the freshwater sources. Uh, Nitrogen waste annually globally costs us nearly 300 billion to 3.4 trillion of USD dollars. It's a huge amount which can be actually utilized better. And there is also a problem of unequal distribution of nitrogen as a nutrient. So some countries they apply much lower nitrogen fertilizers than required, which reduces the food production. And in some countries, the excessive nitrogen fertilizer is applied. So there is a huge challenge of equitable distribution of the nitrogen as nutrient in food production systems. So in a way, if we save or if we reduce the excess amounts that's going in, the waste that's going on, if we reduce that, it means we can redistribute that to the areas where it's needed, and that can actually mean that we produce more food by reducing the nitrogen waste. So considering all these factors, in 2019, with the help of UNEP, the member states have actually adopted Colombo Declaration, which aims at halving the nitrogen waste by 2030. So at South Asia Nitrogen Hub, South Asia is actually a hotspot of nitrogen waste through because of the vehicular emissions, because of the agricultural practices mainly, because of the high population and wastewater going in the oceans and rivers. So we are focusing more on South Asia, and a lot many countries in South Asia. The research institutes, government and non-government research institutes, have brought together all these young researchers to tackle nitrogen pollution and waste. So what we exactly do as researchers is we measure on in the nitrogen levels in atmosphere, in soil, in water. Uh, for example, one project that in Nepal and Sri Lanka, they measure the ammonia levels in uh, atmosphere and its impacts on lichens, because lichens are sensitive to higher nitrogen concentration, and uh, the pollution causes decrease of the biodiversity of lichens in the in the forested areas nearby agricultural fields. We also do monitoring, air monitoring for NOx emissions in Maldives, in Sri Lanka, in the coastal parts of India. Coral bleaching is being monitored for the eutrophication and its impacts on biodiversity. Other than that, we also focus on the solutions. We know the problems. We have identified the sources of nitrogen pollution. Now we have a challenge to tackle them, to have the solutions to reduce that nitrogen pollution and waste. So more than 11 study sites have been established all over the South Asia, and we do the field experiments. For example, some of the researchers, PhD students, are studying the effects of biochar. I'm studying the alternative farming practices like natural farming in India. We are working on regenerative agriculture. So to do that, we also carry out the village level surveys. We identify where the nitrogen waste is occurring and what kind of interventions can be done to reduce that kind of waste of nitrogen. Uh, we are also working on technology and innovations. For example, use of nitrification inhibitors, nutrient recovery from wastewater, and nitro-finance is for circular economy are some of the examples. So I'm very happy that to share all these interesting and wonderful projects that are going on regarding to tackle nitrogen pollution and waste. But these are just some examples, and there are much more going on, and there is potential to do much more than this. So I really would like to discuss if someone's interested in nitrogen pollution, and I would actually I would actually encourage you all to think about it and think if you can do something for reducing the nitrogen waste on your part.
Thank you so much, Rajita, and thank you also for taking time to put some spotlights and highlights on the nitrogen pollution and waste impact and problems. And I'm really impressed by the work you have been doing. And as I told you when we met during UNIA, that this is very sort of inspiration to and towards getting more attentions of young people and young early career professionals towards the nitrogen pollution issues as one of the main challenges also in the pollution crisis. So we still have a chance to get one more speaker. If you'd like to share your work or your project, please feel free to raise your hands. We can get one speaker very briefly. Otherwise, I will share with you next how you can share with us your projects, and we'll have some calls to action before proceeding to the consultations and to the discussion that we will have for the submission. So moving forward, I don't see the chats. Also, no hand raised. Okay, amazing. Then we are right on time according to our agenda. So moving forward, I will share with you in one message. I get together all the links that you need of what we have been mentioning. But to start with, we have the second event of the Zero Waste Day that's in the lead up to the Zero Waste Day that we have been working on, co-organizing it with the International Environment Technology Center of UNEP and UNEP Caribbean Sub-Regional Office and the Children Youth Major Group to UNEP also. So the event is Zero Waste Future, Youth Leadership and Solutions from Asia Pacific to the Caribbean. And that's going to be on Tuesday at 3 p.m. UTC time. And as Henrietta mentioned, one of the things that we can do when it comes to action is that we build our own capacities. So I would recommend and encourage you to have a look and read the Global Waste Management Outlook. All the links are combined together in one message that I'm sharing in a minute. And what's also next, before going to the consultations on the submission, and this is also one of the avenues that you can reflect and we can all voice our concerns or our experiences or our perspectives and views towards an important report that will inform the United Nations General Assembly and will be given to policymakers and also at a high level decision-making forum. So that's also one of the avenue that we can influence or we can share our views and perspectives collectively. One more thing is that in June this year, there's going to be the third session of the open-ended working group on establishing a science policy panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution. And what does that mean is that you've seen that we have the IPCC and the climate change, a science policy panel that produce reports and analysis and important assessments that are policy relevant and support the policy making processes and enhance the science policy interface. But yet in the pollution and chemicals waste domain, we lack such institution or such panels. So in this negotiation, it's the final one, and CYMG is actively engaged in this process. So if you are interested to attend and join, now in the chat box, I'm sharing all the links that I mentioned. So the first one is to register to the Zero Waste second event on 26th of March. And then the second one is the report of the Global Waste Management Outlook. Moving forward, the link that you can express your interests. So as I mentioned, due to the limitations, we can't open the space for all youth actions, but you can register your project or organizations in the link in the Google form I shared. And finally, if you are not yet a member of the Children and Youth Major Group, please do join by the following link. You can copy this message with all the links that I shared, and if it's missed somehow, we can share it, and we'll also drop in that in the WhatsApp groups for sure. Alrighty, so now moving forward to the informal youth consultations. Well, the records will be stopped right after my colleague Jana will share with us some insights about the background and what we're gonna do. And then later on, we will stop the record and we will move into 2 breakout rooms to discuss that. Jana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Asil. Okay, so basically we're going to be, as Asil mentioned, splitting ourselves into 2 breakout rooms in order to discuss the document that I'm going to share as well as the link in the chats. So basically this document is compiling our inputs of the Children and Youth Major Group and like all the children and youth within the, within the world, let's say that, to address the call for inputs that has been issued by the Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights. And basically the inputs are going to be gathered and submitted to the United Nations Special Rapporteur for consideration in his thematic report to the UN General Assembly. This thematic report focuses on exploring the application of a human rights-based approach to addressing gender-based vulnerabilities to human rights violations and abuses resulting from toxic exposure. So we're trying to actually just, as Asil mentioned, give our inputs to this report, given that the UN Special Rapporteur has been appointed by the Human Rights Council to promote and protect human rights globally. So as mentioned by Dr. Henrietta, exposure to toxic substances poses significant challenges worldwide to our health, to our work environment, and specifically when it comes to environmental justice. So women, girls, marginalized communities often bear the brunt of these impacts due to biological, socioeconomic, and gendered vulnerabilities. And as such, we're going to be discussing within the informal youth consultations these specifically in order basically to support and inform the submission that we're going to be sending through to the Special Rapporteur for his 2024 thematic report to the UN General Assembly. Now we're going to be splitting ourselves, I guess, halfway through, and within each breakout room, we're going to be sharing our screens, and we're going to be sharing each of the questions that we're going to be discussing. And basically these questions, the areas of focus are around improving awareness of gender-specific health harms from toxics, investigating regulatory gaps and policy deficiencies, removing barriers to access to justice and remedies, supporting civil society organizations that are advocating for women's and girls' rights, LGBTQI+ rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights movements, all towards addressing environmental challenges. I'm not going to take much more of our time. Let's split ourselves into